everyone, and welcome to another episode of WWT Experts. My name is Matthew Coble. I'll be your host today. And today we'll be talking about IT infrastructure with WWT expert Chris Weis. Chris is part of Worldwide Technology's Global Solutions and Architecture team, and he's currently our Director of Private and Hybrid Cloud Solutions. He's been with Worldwide since 2014, and prior to that held similar engineering roles with other technologies companies, going all the way back to starting his career as an electrical engineer, working on digital circuit boards for an avionics company, which I think is pretty cool. He's based in Iowa, born and raised there, still loves his life there with his family and friends. And that's also where you'll hear the kind, pragmatic, hardworking personality he's got. That's where that comes from. Please welcome Chris Weis. Chris, great to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, let's jump right in. So, we're talking about infrastructure today, and I want to just start with, what is the current typical state of infrastructure in most organizations today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think where we are in infrastructure today in most organizations is really kind of dealing with some of the fallout that came from, the times of COVID. So as we all know, we lived it right during the pandemic. A lot of the infrastructure things that we wanted to get done, we just couldn't get done during those times. And that could have been because there was an initiative to move to public cloud. It could have been because we wanted to get new equipment, new hardware infrastructure on premises, and we just couldn't get it there in time because of supply chain issues. So I think we're at this kind of maybe a little scary, but also kind of interesting time right now for infrastructure, where there's just a lot of things sitting around that probably need to be modernized, refreshed, replaced, things like that. And we have this opportunity to make some pretty cool decisions about what we want to do moving forward. So again, a little scary because we're a little behind on it right now, but also exciting because there's a lot of possibilities moving forward.
Well, talk to us a little bit about how infrastructure has evolved over the years, right? Because originally it was all about, on-premise, my data center and everything there, but now we've got, private cloud, hybrid cloud, full-on public cloud and everything in between. And also I think infrastructure now, the idea of that extends into lots of other things within, our client organization. So what's that evolution been like for everyone?
Yeah, I won't go too far back in time because there's a lot of history here, but maybe just, go back maybe 5 years where there was a lot of on-prem infrastructure. Things were bumping along like they'd always been for a long time. And we started seeing this push towards public cloud. And so we saw a lot of enterprise organizations basically say, look, we're going to adopt a cloud first model. We think that's the right way to go. And so they started rapidly moving workloads into public cloud as quickly as they could, with honestly the intent of getting rid of most, if not all, of their on-premises infrastructure. So we kind of saw this first step of the evolution, which is just get stuff in the cloud as fast as we can. That was aided again by the pandemic we just talked about before. That accelerated that because that was frankly the easy button to keeping things running. I think we're shifting into a different evolution of that right now, where there's a lot of things running in the public cloud space today, or even in on-premises today, where maybe it's not in the place where it should be. So maybe a cloud first or an on-prem first model isn't the right way to look at it. Maybe it's more of a cloud smart or an on-prem smart model. And so we're seeing a lot of customers step back a little bit and look at this and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't actually be, running some of the things where they're running today. Maybe we should take a second look at this and figure out, is there a way to optimize this, make it more efficient? And that could be through moving it to another location or potentially leaving it where it is today and just optimizing the IT infrastructure under the covers.
I know something that we talk about at Worldwide Technology as we go to market is that we help organizations with infrastructure built for tomorrow. So I'd like you to explain that to us.
Yeah, it's a good distinction. So we often hear these two sets of terms thrown around. One is IT infrastructure modernization, and then one is which we kind of stick to a little more, which is this infrastructure that's built for tomorrow or built for the future. And the way I distinguish between those two is you can think of infrastructure modernization as just churning what you have today, but getting the latest and greatest technology to do it. So new CPUs, new storage, new networking technologies, things like that. Every 3 to 5 years, most organizations cycle through those things. They bring in the latest and greatest, and that's good. That's great. It's a good way to drive more efficiency, potentially lower costs, and definitely accelerate the business. But there's another piece to this, which is building your infrastructure for what it needs to look like tomorrow. And tomorrow looks different for different sorts of organizations, but for a lot of them right now, they really like what they're seeing from a consumability perspective of things like public cloud or SaaS. They want to have that on premises. So we're seeing that the infrastructure that's built for tomorrow is really the infrastructure that's built to be consumed by a sort of a cloud operating model, or at least some sort of a software-defined infrastructure sort of a standpoint. Again, we think they're both important. You still want to get the latest and greatest infrastructure in, and there's a lot of ways we can do that and help folks out. But we want to make sure that when we're building these things, we're building them for what the technology needs to look like in the future. And again, that's supporting more of this type of a cloud operating model.
Yeah, so a lot of organizations then, we're helping them kind of take those incremental steps moving into the future. I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about some of the risks you see when organizations don't take those steps and don't future-proof their infrastructure.
Yeah, so it's a great question. There's a bunch of them here. So I think if we, on the modernization side, if you don't modernize your infrastructure, you're basically just giving up scalability and performance. So every year, and this is a credit to the kind of the hardware side of the industry, every year there's just a massive advancement in how fast chips are running, how fast storage devices can move data, and how efficient networks are becoming. So you're giving up that scalability, that performance advantage in your business if you're not modernizing the infrastructure. There's also just a massive shift in the types of technologies we have available to us today. So it's not just server storage arrays and network devices anymore. We have all sorts of acceleration technologies, and that's opening up a whole new area of really innovation that we didn't have before. So 10 years ago, GPUs were this thing that people put in their home PC to play video games, and while that's still true today, GPUs obviously have unlocked a ton of new features and capabilities that we work with at home, we work with on our mobile devices, and obviously anywhere in enterprise IT. So again, emerging technologies are a big risk of giving up if you don't start modernizing your infrastructure. Just a few other ones I think that are tied into this as well. So oftentimes it is very hard to fix people and process sorts of issues in organizations. So technology can be a catalyst to getting that done. And what I mean by that is if you bring in a new game-changing sort of technology suite to improve your business, oftentimes you can go through and you can fix some of the operational issues that you have along with that. Maybe not necessarily a greenfield sort of an approach to getting it done, but you can attack some of that technical debt that basically just drags down your organization. So we see the technology as a catalyst for providing change on the people process side of things, and not just technology for technology's sake.
Well, I know that predicting those kind of future needs can be very challenging, but based on what you're seeing in the market today and the conversations you're having, what are there some principles or key considerations that you're talking to organizations about prioritizing and kind of helping them make good decisions about those investments that they're making as they're moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, a lot of this are things that we've learned from the public cloud world over the years. So I think probably the most important thing, that the key thing that most folks want to have when they're talking about on-prem IT infrastructure is they just want control. So whatever that infrastructure looks like in the future, they want to make sure they can control it from a cost perspective, from a scalability perspective, from a security perspective. They just want to make sure that they know what's going on. They have a view into what things look like, and that if they need to make a change, they can make it. And it's not to say you can't do that in other models, but it's definitely a key tenet of what organizations want to see moving forward. I would say a couple of the other ones would be adaptability. So they definitely want to see that as new business requirements come in, it could be a new business might have a new line of business they want to launch, or it could be a merger and acquisition sort of a thing. They just want to make sure that their IT infrastructure is adaptable to that, and that they don't have to start over, they don't have to rebuy, they don't have to rethink the entire architecture. And part of that is just adopting more of a service-driven sort of an architecture, and not focusing so much on kind of unicorn systems for specific business needs. And then probably the final one I'll just touch on here a bit is around efficiency and sustainability. So I think I think moving forward, this is not just an important thing, but it's actually a catalyst for getting other things done in the organization. So oftentimes in that kind of the IT infrastructure world, we think of efficiency as just doing more for less money or more performance for less power or whatever it might be. But sustainability has really driven this forward a bit in that it's putting a business driver behind that, and they're complementary of each other. So with sustainability, we can ultimately do things that are good for the world, obviously, but we can also drive down costs and potentially get some more innovative technologies in the door to allow us to go faster, more quickly.
All right, Chris. So I know that as we think about sort of infrastructure as being foundational within organizations, some have the opportunity with greenfield, right? Sort of a new environment to build infrastructure, and others are dealing with more of a brownfield environment where they've got to kind of evolve existing infrastructure. So, what are some of the best case scenarios for that greenfield space, and how do you recommend people move forward in that way? And we'll talk about brownfield in a minute.
Yeah, so greenfield is actually becoming something that's not just kind of a thought exercise, but it's a reality for some customers right now. In that they want to get to like I said, that new sort of a cloud operating model, and that's just a massive jump from where they are today. Sometimes it's easier just to stand up a separate environment as a greenfield and go down that road. So what we really see them doing in that sort of world is they're treating the infrastructure like it's truly software defined. So it's maybe to make up a word, but it's fully automatable or able to be automated. So they're not just putting in infrastructure to meet a need. They're putting it in so that it can be defined, driven through software practices, and potentially adapted in the future to some other need that might come in. So a lot of automation that's involved in that, a lot of scripting and all sorts of things like that. So just definitely that software defined piece is a big part of it. The second one is we're seeing them bring in things that they didn't have before in these greenfields. So again, acceleration technologies, new types of storage, software-defined networking technologies, and a whole suite of security things that they didn't have before. Ultimately, trying to drive towards delivering, like I said, that private cloud sort of a thing with a cloud operating model where they can augment the environment however they need to moving forward. That true private cloud operating model, though, is really probably the top ask we see for these greenfield sorts of environments, and it's partially a people process issue, but it's also partially a technology challenge in that we have to build that infrastructure to allow the customer to get to that operating model. So this is a little bit different than how we've done IT in the past, which is typically you talk to the different the different consumers of your IT, you figure out what you need or what they need, and you try to build the best infrastructure you can for them. The cloud operating model is a bit different in that you're effectively building services just like a public cloud provider would, and you're going to ask your internal businesses to basically build around whatever parameters you have in that sort of an environment. So it's a total different mind shift in how you operate the environment and how the business needs to view it, which is why a lot of people break it out into a greenfield environment.
Yeah, well, let's talk then about the brownfield side of that, which I think is sort of a more common notion for most people. I've got existing infrastructure. I'm looking at that idea of infrastructure built for tomorrow. How do I move from here to there?
Yeah, so the first thing we mentioned this before, but the first step is really just modernizing your IT infrastructure. So if you have older infrastructure or infrastructure that's not being utilized correctly, really just figure out what the latest and greatest is out there, see how you can get to it, how you can work that into your purchasing cycles, and get to something that's a little bit more, I guess modern for lack of a better term, but just something that's more relevant to what you're trying to solve today. The second piece, and it often goes hand in hand, is just automate everything in the environment that you can possibly automate. I know we talk about automation a lot, and we talk about it inside of our company. Customers talk about it as well, but the reality is it's hard to do because it's very hard to draw the lines between what you should and should not automate and figure out how to do it end to end successfully. So sometimes just the effort of modernizing IT can open up some doors around automation as well. So that's a key aspect of it. We talked about technical debt a little bit before. I always think of technical debt as it's effectively a tax on your organization, and the more technical debt you have, the larger that tax is. So we want to try to eliminate that as best we can. So sometimes it's not very glamorous about how to deal with brownfield environments, but sometimes it's just going in and doing the dirty work. So figuring out ways to take manual steps out of processes, fixing things that are clunky or things that take manual intervention. And again, just getting past that debt so that you can go focus on the real problems and you don't have to work around the debt every time you have a new challenge that comes in. And again, not really a brownfield thing specifically, but like like it's very common for enterprise organizations to have brownfield environments and greenfield environments at the same time. And so it's a bit of a balancing act, but you want to try to focus on both at the same time, so you can fix and make things more efficient that are there today in the brownfield environment, and you could potentially create the environment of the future or the environment of tomorrow with that greenfield opportunity.
All right, Chris, well, I know we've talked about greenfield and brownfield and how we're doing that in conjunction with our client organizations, but I also know that our Advanced Technology Center at WWT is a key place where we can help client organizations experiment with those sorts of things. So tell us about some ways in which we're doing greenfield, brownfield work in the ATC.
Yeah, the ATC is really the right place to do those sorts of experiments. So on the brownfield side of things, we have a lot of organizations that come to us. They have an existing environment where they're looking at upgrading some component of it, or looking at a new way of automating something, or potentially changing a process in the environment. And they really just want our help, validating how that's going to work, or if it's going to work at all, or potentially comparing a few different options with each other. So we do that all day inside of the ATC. It's a great advantage, and we can take the time to decision making down from months, potentially even years, down to weeks or a few months for a lot of organizations. So it's a huge value add, and it's definitely something we'd like to leverage. Now on the greenfield side, we are getting asked in from a lot of organizations right now where they almost want us to prototype out what looks like a new private cloud or a whole new IT infrastructure stack for them. And this is really powerful because we already have a lot of these technologies inside of the ATC today. So there's not a lot of runway for acquisition and stand up with that infrastructure that we need. And we also have all the technical expertise around for people that understand the infrastructure, they understand automation, they know how to build and operate clouds, and we can effectively stitch together a prototype of what that could look like for the customer. And then they can come in, take a look at it, see if it's something that they want to move forward with or tweak or adjust over time, and we can kind of keep iterating on it. But super interesting. Those projects are large and kind of wide in their scope and everything, but they're a lot of fun, and it's really interesting for us to get to see what we think IT might look like in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, we touched on sustainability earlier with, efficiency and sustainability can sort of line up, but I want you to speak a little bit more about, why sustainability more broadly is a really important thing for IT infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to start off, I just say that it's not just for IT infrastructure; it's for the whole global community. So sustainability isn't just a policy decision; it's something we're doing to really try to make the world a better place for everyone to live in. And it's an effort in IT that we see a lot because that's kind of the world that we live in. But I think it's important to remember this is part of a bigger global initiative, and that's why it's so important at that scale. Now, specifically inside of IT. I think there's a lot of advantages here, and so people often, if you talk to infrastructure administrators or managers, they sometimes look at sustainability like it's a competing effort, or it's somehow taking away funding from their efforts or something like that. We don't see it that way. We actually see them as complementary. So sustainability is driving efficiency in organizations through innovation, and what I mean by that is, in order to get to the levels of efficiency that some corporate boards initiatives say, they've got to innovate on the infrastructure side. So they can't just do things the way that they've been doing them for the past 15 years. It takes the latest and greatest technology. It takes acceleration technology that's just orders of magnitude more efficient from a cost per performance metric sort of a valuation. So it does actually help IT organizations in the end because they can leverage those sustainability efforts to drive more innovation on the infrastructure side. And then in the end, like, sustainability can ultimately drive efficiency, which you can look at it two ways. You could say it's more efficient so we can do more with the same, or you could say it's more efficient so we can potentially lower costs for our organization. And both are perfectly good outcomes of it, but that sustainability effort can be the catalyst to help move that forward.
All right, Chris, so I always like to end with our experts by asking them to look toward the future a little bit. So I'm curious, as you think about infrastructure, where are you excited to see that go in the coming years?
Yeah, these are always fun questions to have. So I think the thing that I'm the most excited about, and I can actually see this happening, so this isn't just pie in the sky stuff, is I think we've, for the longevity of IT so far, we've always treated infrastructure and on-premises IT like like it's this thing that we custom build and mold for specific business units inside of organizations. And I think we've learned enough in the last 3 to 5 years, and we'll continue moving forward with cloud computing models that while that is individually very efficient for those different business units, it may not be the best thing to do overall. So I actually see the kind of the next generation of on-premises infrastructure, IT, whatever you want to call it, is almost another cloud operating model or a cloud provider that just happens to be hosted internally. And we're gonna start seeing them do things like what we're seeing in public clouds today. But it's going to be on-prem. It's going to be arguably a little more customized to the business unit needs, and could potentially be a lot lower in cost. So that's not just in the data center, but that's also going to be covering things like edge computing as well, which is increasingly important for a lot of organizations out there. So I'm just excited to see obviously the technology side, but maybe even more so just the people and process side of how this is going to change over time as we start treating, again, internal infrastructure more like private clouds and less like like individual pods of technology. So I'm super excited about it.
Well, Chris Weis, it's always great to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's super excited to be here, and I'll be glad to be back anytime.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us as well. This has been another of our WWT Experts sessions. We've got a great back catalog out that you could go see on demand. Lots more coming up in the future, so head to wwt.com/events. Check that out. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.